So every week, every fortnight she got her allowance, and it would run out 3 to 4 days beforehand, and she'd get really stressed as to how she's going to get the food and blah blah blah, and it's like, there's no fucking man who's ever giving me an allowance in my life. And so I love you, Dad, immensely. And so a big part of my journey has been redefining some of the ways that we grow up in terms of the roles in the household. My mum was horrified when I was going to go back to work with a 3-month-old baby, and what was my child going to turn out like, and that I wasn't going to be home for her. So all the way through, it's been about redefining my own views, actually, in terms of racism, my own views in terms of the value of diversity, coming at it from the other side. And so what I've learnt through all of that, and what I had that great pleasure to work with in Xero, was the most wonderful diverse team of all ages, of obviously both genders, and of all LGBT biases, and actually multiple races. And that was, for me, the actual first time I truly experienced what is possible when you get that many different views in the room. And so then the things that I learned out of that, which I'm going to share, and then talk about where I think the world's going and how that will affect you, and then I'm going to open it up for questions. What I learned out of that is that the skills that are required of us as individuals, as leaders, are changing really, really fast. So gone are the days where our opinions as leaders are the only opinions that matter. Gone are the days where you can't be tolerant of differences. And gone are the days where, as an individual, you can create, well, not gone, but you can create brilliance on your own without that many different views of diversity in the room. And so as I move forwards, I look at a couple of things. I'm going to talk a bit about technology, but actually for me it's not technology, it's what technology is doing to all of us that is changing how we need to operate. So the first is, we are about to go through the biggest technological change we've ever seen. I always ask the question, is anyone tired from the technology change that we've already been through? Is anyone feeling tired? A little bit? Who's on Twitter? Who's on Facebook? Yeah. Who's on LinkedIn? Snapchat? Tinder? No one admits to it. So, basically the internet PC revolution has gone through our society in about 50 years. So we've actually had quite a long time to adjust to it. It's a bit like the frog boiling. We haven't really noticed it, but when you think about life now compared to 50 years ago, phenomenal. And the Industrial Revolution went through in 150 years. The change of the internet revolution to the industrial is about 300 times the scale and 3,000 times the impact. That's why we're all tired, because we've been through a lot of change. When you look at what we're going to go through, when basically the internet hits industrial or matter, hits us, anything like that, that's going to go through in the next 15 to 20 years, tops. So that's how long it will take. And our world will be further changed than anything we can imagine and anything that we've seen in the last 50 years. So one of the biggest things for me is not just the technology that's coming through and the opportunities that that's providing us, but what does that do to us as humans and how do we cope with that? So what do some of those changes look like? Things like drones, not just 3D printing, but 4D printing. Has anyone heard of 4D printing? So that's the ability to add a fourth dimension. I don't get this personally yet, it's a bit beyond my comprehension. But basically you might have a toaster or even a couch, and it might be this size, and you package it to my house and I'll plug it in. So I'll add electricity or water or some other stimulant or catalyst, and it will completely change shape. So, which is just crazy, really, really crazy. But you think of the applications that you go, oh, okay, really, really interesting. So, I worked at Chorus where we have, pipes. So instead of digging up roads to put bigger, fatter pipes in, or, having to dig up, put more cabinets in the things, God, could you just shove some water in it and it'll expand it? That's seriously cool in terms of impacts for infrastructure. Drones, flying vehicles, absolutely. Driverless vehicles will come our way. We will be able to measure anything and everything about ourselves. So you'll get up in the morning and be able to go to the toilet, and then have a little screen which says, "Good morning, Victoria, you drank far too much last night, and today your diet needs to look like this," for example. And then I'll go through my day and get my food delivered, which would be really awesome, and then, being the good person at the end of the day. I'll do things and it will come and say, right, very good, excellent, looking good, otherwise no, try harder tomorrow. But what's the point of that? The point is, I don't know if I'm interested in that or not actually, but the point is that when you look at some of these technologies, what they're going to be able to do to help us solve some of our social problems is really interesting. So I look at that and I go, okay, so we waste half of the fresh food in America, fresh fruit and vegetables and fruit. We waste a third of the fish in Europe, and we waste around a third of meat around the world. So if we are understanding how much we need to eat, 49% of adults are obese, then if we have much better understanding of that and then much better understanding of what we have eaten, then imagine what we could do with that. The same with driverless vehicles. 90,000 people around the world every day are injured in a road accident. The biggest impact on a road accident is human, either human error, alcohol, speed, whatever it is. If you can take those dimensions out, imagine what we can do to transform the insurance industry, the health industry, ACC, everything in regards to that. So that's the way I think about technology. And there's a lot more coming, right? That's just a little part of it. So what does this mean for us? I can't speak specifically for vets, and probably the impacts would be slightly lower, but it means generally in New Zealand 45% of our jobs will go. They will be automated. And every time I say that, it rips my heart out, because I feel a huge amount of responsibility to New Zealand to help people understand that almost 1 in 2 people in New Zealand will lose their job and they will have to reskill. And so how are we preparing them for reskilling? And so in Callaghan Innovation, we're doing some work around future workforce planning, actually saying, well, what of our jobs are going to be automated? What new jobs will we have in the future? And then how do we transition our people? Because what we do know is that businesses down south who are coming out of factories, things like that social enterprises are picking them up, retraining those people and making them fit for the future world. So we know that we can retrain, and hence my point around our children and us being able to constantly reskill ourselves to evolve our careers. So that's number one. Number two is the skills that we need are going to be quite different. So things that are really important in the future when you have all of this automation, all of this information at our fingertips about every single thing that we could possibly want to know about. Doesn't matter whether it's animal, whether it's human, whether it's your vehicle, whatever it is, you will know. You will have the ability to know. And we will have the ability to know at scale. Is that changes skills. So it's about constructive thinking, it's about inquiry, it's about creativity, it's about problem solving, and it's about empathy, it's about relationships. So they're quite 5 big skills that are quite different than our kids are being taught in schools today. The third one is that as leaders, it completely changes what is demanded of us. And what does that mean? That means that emotional intelligence becomes really, really important. Who's heard of emotional intelligence? Yes. So 6% of your job success is your IQ, 6% is your functional skills, and the rest of it is emotional intelligence. I'm not actually that bright. I'm smart, I'm not that bright, but I'm really, really good at relationships and emotional intelligence. And so that's where I've got to. The next one is cultural intelligence, being able to harness diversity. And that's actually for me why females is so important, because if you can understand women in the workplace, then you can understand diversity, particularly as a predominantly male industry. And diversity is critical to not just success, but to the future of our country, given that 50% of New Zealand will be non-European by 2040, I think it is, 2040, 2050. So that's the other one. The next one is your values. So your values as a leader is on show, and you've had a couple of good examples of that in the veterinary industry over the past 9 months, with a certain person being fired, and then another example this week. So you've got people who have gone from heroes to zero overnight by saying a comment that is inappropriate in today's world. It might have been appropriate 10, 20, 30 years ago, but our values are shifting so fast that what was appropriate to say 5, 10 years ago is no longer appropriate. Why are our values shifting so fast? I wanted to share my view with you on this, is that it's social media. Do you know how many people are on Facebook now across the world?
6 billion?
2 billion. It's going to go to 6 billion. They will find a way to get that many people on it, but it's 2 billion. And so what we're doing is we're having these global conversations in ways that we've never been able to before at scale. And so what does that mean? That means that we are discussing what's happening in other countries, other leaders. We're getting stuck into each other. We're learning how not to be polite to each other. We're learning what's appropriate, what's not, in a way that we've never been able to before. And so you can see a shift, a value shift, literally year to year in what is acceptable now for leaders to be talking about in public and in social media. So as leaders moving forwards, your morals, ethics, values are on the line in a public, transparent way that they've never been before. Other things like your resilience, your ability to constantly educate and upskill yourselves, those are the things that will become important for leaders moving forwards. And then the final one, which I think is relevant to you, is that the whole way our business models are set up is going to change as well. What does that mean? That means that we are shifting from individual businesses to platforms. This shift is well underway. And I don't know how much the veterinary industry has embraced platforms in terms of groups of services coming together that interact seamlessly together to meet your customers' needs. But that is where the future is going. And so constantly scanning for who is your next partner, which, by the way, may be your current competitor. So you may compete one day and collaborate the next day. But going it on your own is going to be harder and harder in the world that we are going into. So thinking about platforms. So I was talking to Megan beforehand, and she was just saying, well, how do you kind of think about businesses? And I think about businesses in the same way that I think about myself, which is, what is the problem that you're trying to solve? Because if you can understand the problem that you're trying to solve, and that's not just your problem, but also what is your customer's problem, and then you are able to apply technology and innovation to that in a way that no one else is doing, that's when you create your source of competitive advantage. That's when you create your breakthrough business, or your unicorn, as we call them in the innovation land. That's when you create something that no one else can come near or touch. So I thought maybe I'll just leave it there. Hopefully I'm not boring you all.
No, you're good.
Loads of different things that I can talk about. And maybe just take a few questions, and then if I had bored you all and there's no questions, I'll just talk for 2 minutes and that's it. Yeah. Any questions or thoughts, or particular areas of interest that you might? I can go down all sorts of areas.
What makes you happy at night?
My children
And
Milo and Ruchi, my dog and cat, care of them. Yeah, I think that's and I think when you talk to other working mums, there's a code, because you know how hard we work to. And for me, I'm the primary caregiver, I don't have a partner. And so I just work my ass off to be a great role model for my children in terms of what is possible, what they could be if they wanted in their career, and they can be whatever they want. I said to my daughter, if you want to be the best plumber in Auckland, I will support you be the best plumber in Auckland. Just be really passionate about what you do. But then trying to juggle that with all the commitments you have as a mum, let alone as a daughter to my parents, etc., is just really, really hard work. And so I just go to bed every night and be thankful for my children, and then I made it through another day. Yeah.
And I think that's our point, is that I think as veterinarians, with this world of technology, like zooming around us and the black hole that everyone's falling into, what's going to become more important? The children and the animals.
That's right.
So for us, it's about, we are in a very good position to actually stay out of that orbit of the black hole.
Yeah.
Because the kids, will they know what a dairy cow is? I'm not really sure, but will they know? Will they touch fur? And I think that's really